In this section, I want to talk about the immune system function, the three lines of defense, and also the importance of vaccination. We all have experience of having disease like cold, flu, viral infection, and the other kind of disease. We are aware of them like cancer, diabetes. So it's not very easy to know the exact meaning of disease, but what causes disease in our body is the pathogens, that they are microorganisms and the infectious agent that cause disease in our body with the help of antigen, that you can find the antigen on the surface of pathogen. They can be any type of molecule like as a protein, carbohydrate, nucleic acid, and fat. The immune system can be divided into three basic lines of defense, like physical and chemical barrier, non-specific resistant and specific resistant, that both of them are innate immunity, and this one is specific, that it means that they can distinguish between the specific type of pathogens. The body's most important physical barrier is skin, that comprises three layers: epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis or subcutaneous. The dead layer of cells, it has a thick layer of dead cells that can remove every 28-day cycle. And as long as the skin is unbroken, without any cut, without any grace, it can be a very important physical barrier that prevent the entering of pathogens in your body. Then we have mucous membrane that it can line the surface of many parts of your body, like gastrointestinal tract, the nasal and airway, the bladder, and the vaginal tract, because they secrete mucus, so they can protect you from the disease and from entering the pathogens into your body. We have gastrointestinal, as you see, the stomach acid, the pancreatic enzyme, the bile and intestinal secretion are the good barrier against the entering of pathogens. Then we have lysozyme as the chemical barrier that help your body. They act as an antibiotic, as a barrier to help you to against the disease, against the entering of pathogens in your body. Then we have trachea and bronchi, that lung from nose toward the lung. Because they have ciliated cells, it means the tiny hair that trap all the pathogens. They prevent the pathogens to enter your body. And we have nasal cavities or airway, because of this tiny hair and the walls of nose that secrete the mucus. They can trap all the microbes to entering in your lung. And we have the vaginal tract or the bladder that is protected by urethra, and in male and female, when they empty their bladders, they can flush out all the microbes and pathogens. Then we have the second line of defense. They are innate or general barrier, because they cannot distinguish between the specific type of pathogens. We have inflammation, fever, phagocytes, complement protein, and cytokines. Inflammation is a physiological response to increase the blood cells at the site of infection. The fever is the increase in the level of temperature in your body, because it wants to stop the growing of bacteria and microbes. Then we have phagocytes, when the large white blood cells engulf and digest the infected cells. Complement protein is a range of blood protein that break down and ultimate the removal of the pathogens. And we have cytokines, the small antimicrobial protein that stop the reproduction of virus. And the third line of defense has two main qualities. They are specific and they are adaptive. They are specific because they can distinguish between the specific type of pathogens, and they are adaptive. It means that they have memory, they can remember the pathogens that enter the body for the second time. We have blood cells. The key elements of the immune system is leukocytes, or what blood cells that defend the body against the pathogens. We have 5 types of blood cells, or leukocytes: monocytes, lymphocytes, neutrophils, and eosinophil and basophils. The neutrophils, as you can see, is the most common type of white blood cells. They can attach to the walls of bloodstream, and they can block the entering of microbe and doesn't allow the germ to enter the bloodstream. And we have monocytes as the largest type of blood cells. They turn into macrophages when they enter the bloodstream, and they digest all the infected cells. We have eosinophil that they release toxin from the granules to attack the parasite and worm, the infection from the parasite and worms. Then we have basophils. They are very rare in the blood, in the white blood cells in the bloodstream, and they secrete anticoagulant and antibodies that act against the hypersensitivity reaction. We have the lymphocytes. They play a very major role in the blood, in the immune system. There are 3 types of lymphocytes, B lymphocytes, T cells, and natural killer cells, that they are related to the innate immunity. B cells and T cells are produced in bone marrow, but T lymphocytes are matured in thymus gland. We have T cells, that 80% of the lymphocytes are T cells. They have they do a very major role. They play a very major role in the white blood cells. We have 3 types of T cells: cytotoxic T cells, suppressor T cells, and helper T cells. The cytotoxic T cells defend the body against the virus. They can produce the special protein called the perforin, and perforate the infected cells, and also they need the activated antigen presenting cells, and along with the helpers T cells. We have suppressor T cells. They suppress the function of B cells and T cells, and regulate the function of the immune system. We have helper T cells, that 75% of the total number of T cells are helper T cells, and they are major regulator of the immune system, and they release lymphokines that help control the other part of immune system. It also helps the B cells to be stimulated and grow, and stimulate the activation of B cells. We have B cells, or humoral immunity. 10 to 15% of the lymphocytes are B cells. They are very specific because they produce special antibodies to defend the body. They're producing B cells. Production of antibody by B cells is called humoral immunity, and it begins when the antigen, when the antibody on a B cell bind to the antigen, and when the B cells grow, it produces plasma cells, and also the memory cells. That memory cells, it means that store information for the second phagocytes, second infections that enters your body. Then the immune system responds to the antigen by producing a special protein called antibodies, or immunoglobulin. We have 5 types of antibodies: immunoglobulin G, A, M, E, and D. The most common type of immunoglobulin are G, as you can see in the picture, and they are the major activator of the complement pathway. They can stimulate a direct attack. They can have a direct attack on the foreign substances, and they can transfer from mother to the fetus through the placenta. We have immunoglobulin A. They are very important in cellular defense of the soft, moist mucosal. And we have immunoglobulin M. They have 5 types of immunoglobulins joined at their base. And the immunoglobulin A, they are very low in the health body, because only they are activated, the level of them increase when to the response of parasite infection. And immunoglobulin D is the receptor on the surface of B cells. The immune system can recognize between self and non-self through the mechanism of antigen, because the antigen have very unique nature. The body's cells can carry very specific marks on them that immune system can recognize them as cells, and it's not allowed to attack these cells. But when the bodies encounter to new pathogens, to foreign pathogens, the immune system automatically defend the body and attack to it as the non-self. The self-tolerance is the ability of the immune system to distinguish between self and non-self through two mechanisms, like central tolerance and peripheral tolerance. That the central tolerance occurred in the thymus, T cells, and bone marrow, but the peripheral tolerance happened in the outer organs of maturation. The two important factors that help immune system along with lymphocytes is that help the immune system to distinguish between self and non-self is through the major histocompatibility complex 1 and 2. That major histocompatibility 1 is an early warning of immune system, and when they encounter, they are expressed on the surface of all nucleated cells. When they encounter to a foreign protein, they degrade this protein into the fragments and display them, present them to be recognized as a foreign. And the major histocompatibility 2 molecules are only present on certain cells, and the pathogens are these pathogens are endocytes, or they are internalized by B cells and phagocytes. I want to talk about some autoimmune disease when immune system by mistake attack to its own tissue, like the multiple sclerosis. That is an autoimmune system and autoimmune condition that it can affect the brain and the spinal cord when the immune system attacked, when the nerve that protects, as you can see, the nerve that protect and surround the myelin sheath, and it can distort the electric signal that travel through the nerve, through the body, and it can, this scar is called sclerosis. And you can see dermatographia as an autoimmune disease again. It is a condition that related to integumentary system, when a very minor scratch in your skin led to a very significant reaction, and the symptom of dermatographia is redness, deep wounds, itchiness, and inflammation in your skin. and the transplantation, when the transferring of cells, tissue, organs from one body to another body is transplantation. And as you know, that the immune system has a very strong barrier to the foreign bodies, to the foreign tissue, to the foreign infections. So it can be a very physical barrier. It can be a very strong barriers for the new organs from the donor as well. Then we have three kind of rejection, transplantation rejection, hyperacute, acute rejection, and chronic rejection. That hyperacute rejection occurs exactly at the moment after transplantation surgery. The acute rejection can take place in the first week, and the chronic rejection can take place over many years. Then we have active immunity. Active immunity is a resistance that gain as a towards again to a particular disease or illness by producing antibody. We have two kind of active immunity: the natural or artificially. And natural is to naturally being exposed to some pathogens that cause the immune system to produce antibody, but the artificially is intentionally exposed to pathogens. We have passive immunity, that the natural one is during the breastfeeding, during the pregnancy can be transferred to the body, but artificially is by transfusion or injection of antibody from one person to another person. Then we have vaccination. Vaccination is contained the weakened and harmless version of pathogens. We have immunological memory, the ability of the immune system to respond to pathogens that has been previously occurred quicker and faster than before. And we have primary response as a secondary response. The first time when the pathogens encounter for the first time to your body, and it takes time for the antigen to be identified by the B cells and lymphocytes, and for the appropriate antibody to be produced by the plasma cells. Secondary response is when the pathogen is encountered for the second time, and the memory cells recognize these pathogens. The importance of vaccination is controlling the childhood mortality, as the measles. You know that measles is one of the contagious virus illness that cause too much problem for the human. That is after 1940. Before the vaccine was introduced in 1968, the UK and many countries used to see too many cases and death every day, but the vaccine control everything. Then too many factors can influence the vaccine uptake. Many factors like benefits, risk and uncertainty, information, trust, and other values and attitudes, practical consideration, benefit, like the direct benefit of vaccination is the protection, and when the people believe that this protection can help them to, they're gonna try to have vaccine. The risk of disease and the factors, the effects is the key elements, the key factors that help people, encourage the people to take the vaccine. The information, the source of information and where the people get this information about the vaccine is very important. Trust. The higher level of vaccine uptake is associated with trusting healthcare workers. And the other, we have religious and philosophical beliefs and practical other practical consideration or barriers are effective on vaccination uptake.
Bir saniye.